What was your first experiences? Let's start first with crypto in general that really
Yeah.
got you into this. How'd you end up in this spot?
I didn't even get into crypto because of crypto. I got into crypto because of sports betting. So if anyone knows offshore sports betting at that time, you had to deposit Bitcoin. All of a sudden, crypto gaming popped up last year. And then my previous background was esports. So all those worlds just collided. And I was lucky enough to have a little bit of Bitcoin and a little bit of Ethereum from those sports betting days. Really got me on my feet in the crypto world. And then, yeah, just took it from there with the crypto gaming and the YouTube. And now we're here.
Hey, JB here, the Wolf of Wall Street, for another awesome episode of the Wolf's Den, and I got a really fucking cool guest today, right? He's so cool, by the way, that he only has one name. I think that's cool. And young, 26-year-old, handsome as fucking hell, by the way. I like that.
Thank you, Jordan.
Not a terrible thing. You must be getting laid like fucking crazy. God, I remember those days. Anyway, Hustle, how are you, buddy?
Doing well, Jordan. Thanks for having me.
Nice to meet you. So listen, I have tremendous respect for you. I'll tell you why, okay? Because it's one thing to be an expert in the whole crypto, especially for gaming and Web3, and you're really in the forefront of that, right? But more important than that, you've developed a platform and a following. You're actually a conduit of information. So you have a show on YouTube, which is, I think it's 500,000 subscribers, growing.
Correct.
Probably the fastest growing shows on YouTube. I watched it. It's unbelievable, right? It's really informative, right? Where you give people advice. You try to help them get in early to things. And by the way, that it's so funny because I'm writing a book right now on crypto, and he was like, we're just having this early conversation. He's like, yeah, it's like, but if you do that, it's like going to a casino and throwing dice. And I'm like, did you fucking read my book? And like,
You showed me the lines.
I just written this line this morning about going to a casino. So you really know your shit. So I respect that. And I love the idea that you educate people. So let's just go back a little bit in time. So what was your first experiences? Let's start first with crypto in general that really got you into this. How'd you end up in this spot?
So yeah, a different type of gaming, you could say, because whenever I first got into crypto, it was 2017. I was a junior in college, and I didn't even get into crypto because of crypto. I got into crypto because of sports betting. So if anyone knows offshore sports betting at that time, you had to deposit Bitcoin.
Right.
That's how I got involved. And then 2017 occurred, things went up, things went down. I wasn't really involved in the crypto market at the time, but then when I saw the potential over time evolving with the blockchain, I started studying it a little more. Bought some Bitcoin, bought some Ethereum. All of a sudden, crypto gaming popped up last year, and then my previous background was esports. So all those worlds just collided, and I was lucky enough to have a little bit of Bitcoin and a little bit of Ethereum from those sports betting days. Really got me on my feet in the crypto world, and then just took it from there with the crypto gaming and the YouTube, and now we're here.
So when you first started going into sort of more the like educational part of it, and being a broadcaster, right? Is it something that like right away just clicked for you, or did you struggle in the beginning?
So when I came from esports and gaming, there's Twitch. So Twitch streamers, they go on, they play games, they talk to their community. So you'll have a live chat and you're like playing, but you're also talking to your community. So at the same time, whenever we rolled out the live broadcast for crypto, it was almost seamless for me. The one take type of content where I don't have to rerun or cut things out.
Right.
I really like that style anyway, because I came from a streaming environment in esports where that's what you had to do. You don't have a retake, everything's live. So it was really a seamless transition. And then crypto gaming just made so much sense to me. So I'm speaking about something that I'm very passionate about and that I feel like I do tons of due diligence on. So it just made a lot of sense to me. At first, picking up the traction of viewers, I say was the hardest part, but delivering my value and what I know on the space is just seamless in my opinion, because I'm doing the research. I might as well just share it.
Right. Was there a moment like when you started doing this where you said, shit, I actually think I got something here? Like, was there like a certain episode where like just or a certain day where you had like just like a great guest on that went viral? Because I assume after you broadcast, it stays on there, right? People can,
correct,
right?
So on my personal channel, before I even joined Crypto Banter, which we have 500,000 subscribers, like you mentioned, I did a video on a project. I'm not going to say the project's name. I mentioned it within a few weeks at 33x in price. That was my big, wow, this guy has a sharp eye for projects, upcoming low cap gyms. So that really got me on my feet. People started the compound effect from there. And then the bull run started taking off right after that as well. So it kind of compounded into this massive viewer base that was coming in. And then obviously Meta coming into the Metaverse brought tons of new search optimization to Metaverse, what I was doing. So I was already in the gaming, crypto gaming, Metaverse, NFT content. And then once Meta swept the space, it really took off from there.
So would you say that's probably, if there's one thing that It's called Crypto Banter, right?
Correct.
So is there a number of different shows within Crypto Banter? What are the different shows?
Yeah, so Ran, he does the fundamental shows. He's like the main guy for the channel. He does the macro overview, like the Fed meeting today, for example. He'll cover all that stuff, inflation rates, different types of layer one projects, etc. We have a charter. His name's Sheldon, so he does the technical analysis on the charts for different types of coins, obviously, trying to judge, where the charts are going from here. Miles, he does the DeFi content, yield farming, staking, etc. And then I'm all crypto gaming, metaverse, and NFTs.
Got it. So you pretty much got the whole thing covered.
We're trying to build all-encompassing educational platform where people can come and learn about whatever sector of the market they're looking for.
So why do you think that so many people, young people especially, and I have a very young audience here, right? I have older people too, but why is it that exists out there all this great information about what you should be doing, what you shouldn't be doing? Why do you think so many people, when they first get in crypto, they just get fucking slaughtered? Like, and what's if we could have some like sort of do's and don'ts here from your experience, what are the things that a new investor, someone that's just getting in or in for a little bit, what should they be doing? How do they start?
Research first. There's so much in this space, and there's so many, and what we do, there's content creators out there that will just shamelessly plug things for their own benefit, basically, for their own bags, but they call it shilling, basically, or pumping your own bags. And a lot of influencers use that platform in the wrong way. So what I think for a new investor to come in is just do research on Bitcoin. What does the cap supply do? Like, why is Bitcoin so valued versus something like the US dollar? Get that education in your head first, because that trickles down into everything else. Then you start learning about the layer ones, the Ethereums, the Avalanches, those types of protocols, which run different types of projects on their own chain. I think just educating yourself and finding those projects that then fit what you're looking for. Take a look at the market caps as well. Market cap means everything in crypto. People think price is everything. Market cap is everything, because that's going to dictate the price. Newbie investors just look at price. So I would say market cap is huge, and just educate yourself on the space. Whatever you're looking to do, whether it's NFTs, crypto gaming, Bitcoin, whether you want to do layer ones, security coins. There's so many different niches within crypto. I found my most success when I niched down. So educate on the things that you care about the most and focus on them.
So let's go back. Let's slow it down. So, okay. So number one, you made a statement, which I agree with, right? You said Bitcoin you believe is undervalued, right? Explain, why do you think that? What's your thesis on that?
Well, just look at I think that's the easiest thing to describe, is just because, every single day, we're just printing more of these dollars into the economy, and every single day our dollar is losing value. We see the inflation rates, whatever they're saying it is, we all know it's a little higher than what everyone says it is whenever the Fed does announce the inflation. I just think that the cap supply, when you look at Bitcoin versus the gold standard, it's the same thing. Like, we're going back in time. We're trickling down from old risk assets that were stores of value, like gold. People are going to move that towards Bitcoin because of the cap supply, because of the monetary ability. So let's just say banks are closed, obviously, on a Saturday. It's going to take 3 business days to process your transaction. It's seamless money. You're your own bank. There's no middleman. And the biggest thing with Bitcoin and in crypto in general is taking out the middleman, because it should be peer-to-peer. If I want to be my own financier and my own bank, I should be able to do so via Bitcoin.
So in your mind, would you say Bitcoin is digital gold?
Correct. I do. I think so.
That's your thesis.
I think so. I think years down the line, people who are building up their Bitcoin at a store of value will be very well positioned.
Got it. And the reason you think that's because while the US dollar can be debased, meaning they can keep printing more and more and more, right?
Correct.
The Bitcoin is literally capped. We all know how much is getting created every day up until a certain point. It's 2040. And then 100 years more to the last million, it's like 20 million to a certain date, and then another million over 100 years, right?
Correct.
But that's all that can be created.
Correct.
So your idea is that, okay, well, listen, if there's only X amount of these things, right, there's just no way to screw with it. While in the history of all nations, it seems like over time, politicians, kings, princes, whatever they might do, right? Whether it's to finance a war or their own harem or the fucking whatever it might be,
right?
They will literally just start corrupting their own money supplies. That's your thesis.
Yeah, all the greatest economies in the world have failed at some point in time. That's something proven over history. You could just go back to the Roman empires, all the different times in history. Economies, the biggest economies have all failed at some point in time. And I think that with this capped supply, also you look at the participation rate in crypto. I think something like 0.1% of America is involved in cryptocurrency. And we're looking at a $38,000 Bitcoin with almost, whatever, that's like $1 trillion market cap itself. So we're looking at an asset that is hardly even adopted yet to the full scale. It's crazy to say we're 10 years into Bitcoin being created, or 11 years in basically. So we're looking at an asset that I think is not only going to be that store of value in the future, but more people are going to move in as regulation comes into.
So what would you say to people that bought Bitcoin and paid $60,000 and they're down? What would you say to them?
DCA, dollar cost average, just like set up on like the easiest thing to do. Timing the market's hard. We talked about this, like being a short-term trader in cryptocurrency. If you're not an insider or if you don't know something, it's the hardest thing in the world. If you think you can know where the price is going in a week, then be my guest kind of thing. I'm in it for the long term, So let's go. No, because listen, we're in agreement here. I'm trying to. I'm letting you help me tell my audience what I want to tell them as well. So I'm not being coy here. We agree on this stuff. So, but I'd like you to help me educate my audience. So I guess the point I'm making here is like, if you went out and bought Bitcoin at $60,000, right? If your thesis was, I'm going to get to 70 and sell it, you probably shouldn't have bought it in the first place. Correct.
Right? The idea here is that, it's a great long-term investment, store of value, and just based on the printing of money and all the things that are happening right now, the increased adoption, institutional adoption, I believe, tell me if you think this is correct or not. I'm a believer that when regulation comes in, it will be ultimately incredibly positive for Bitcoin because it will pave the way for large institutions to buy, and ultimately, there's an old saying on Wall Street, you're not so old, but it's institutional money is usually smart money.
Yeah.
Even when it's not, it's enough to fuel the market anyway. So the idea is that you mentioned this sort of like this, such a small level of people involved. So what you're saying is that as more people get involved, finite supply, more demand, price goes higher.
Yeah.
But the point is, though, the market in any given weekday, month, or even 6 months might not reflect that.
Correct.
But over 2, 3, 4, 5 years, it almost has to. Is that your thesis?
100%. And over the time, you bought at 60,000, set a recurring buy every single week for X amount of dollars. It'll put you into Bitcoin and it'll stack up your Bitcoin without you having to time the market. That's the hardest thing for people to do. So when I'm saying the DCA in, just set up a recurring buy and just stack up your Bitcoin.
Okay, so we start there. Now, next place you go, obviously, is to where you go to Ethereum, right? So Bitcoin was the big mama bear of the whole thing. Ethereum comes in, and suddenly that allows people to almost build on top of it, start creating what are called smart contracts,
dApps,
utility, dApps, and so forth, right? And dApps is
decentralized applications.
Decentralized applications, meaning that, and let's just give me your definition of decentralization.
Decentralization is taking out the middleman, like I just said with Bitcoin, right? So in traditional finance, I have my account, but when I send money to you, the bank has to approve it, or there's the intermediary in between. Decentralization takes out the middleman. It just peer-to-peer. Blockchain is the middleman.
Okay, so what he's saying here, is make sure that we're all in agreement here. I agree with you, but I want to make sure everyone understands this, right? So what happens typically in the traditional world of finance is always some trusted third party that says, yes, he had the money in his account and it's okay. Yes, they take a little bit and then send it out. And sometimes not a little bit, but they hold it for a couple of days and then it gets to the other side. It allows the credit card process to function, right? So it's there. There's always some institution that we supposedly trust that's going to make good on the transaction.
Yeah.
That's traditional finance, right?
And you can even dumb it down to other industries, movie industries, with the studios taking so much of a cut, or with agents in sports taking so much of a cut from an athlete, record labels and music. There's so much you could make an example for with that middleman, and decentralization can take away that aspect.
So some people would say that centralization also has its strengths. And in many ways, decentralization is not as efficient or elegant, and that the only times that decentralization makes sense is if that third party has such an ability to meddle and fuck things up that it doesn't even matter if it's less efficient. It's still a light year ahead, because anytime a third party gets involved, ultimately something bad happens. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
So as far as like just the decentralized aspect, the positives and the negatives. It's good to have an overseeing eye. Don't get me wrong, right? And complete decentralization in this world, who knows where things would have gone over time if we didn't have centralized entities. But taking back power from the system, I think, is the biggest thing. And that's what you're doing with cryptocurrency, with the blockchain, with decentralization. And it's just putting that next step forward where institutions will eventually, banks will eventually get in and completely support Bitcoin, completely support cryptocurrency, because they have to. Because once enough people adopt the technology to actually start being their own bank, cutting out that middleman, cutting out the intermediary, I think that's just going to be huge. It's going to be a timestamp in time when the banks have to adopt it, because it's becoming such a popular thing in America.
So if you go back in history, and I love studying history, right?
Yeah.
You look at these technologies that came out and they were disruptive, right? And often there was two versions of the same technology. For example, back when I was growing up, when you were even a twinkle in your parents' eye, we had something called Betamax. Betamax was actually more efficient version of VHS. You know what VHS is?
Yeah, of course.
You're even too young for that.
No, I know.
Okay, VHS, right. But we had these Betamax recorders for video and VHS. Betamax was better quality, but VHS had a better content strategy. So one was so Betamax was closed, centralized. VHS was decentralized equivalent. I mean, anyone could make one. So ultimately, VHS won out, and Betamax went into the junkyard of history as, a better application that just no one adopted, right?
Right.
Happens a lot, right? We've seen it happen also with Laserdisc and Blu-ray. Like Laserdisc, just no one did.
Correct.
Blu-ray won out today, right? But I think we also see other circumstances like iPhone and Android, where you have iPhone represents the centralized system, essentially closed ecosystem, all things Apple, and they control it, versus Android, which is open platform. Many people make the phones a bit more decentralized.
Yeah.
And we notice how they run side by side with each other. It's not like one had to win, one had to lose. In fact, Android has a bigger market share, although the premier is Apple. So it might be 30% Apple, 70%, but they run side by side. My question to you is, do you think that one day there are no more centralized institutions, or do you think it's more likely that there'll eventually be centralized institutions, and then you'll DeFi with on-ramps and off-ramps and KYCs connecting those two highways and so forth? What do you think?
The second, I don't see centralized entities going out the door, right? And I think that was a fantastic example, comparing Apple to the centralization and then the decentralization of the Android devices, because Samsung, so many different phone providers or phone manufacturers, Google, et cetera, they can make those Android phones, and it's an Android. So I think that's a fantastic example, and they don't have to knock each other out of competition. Like even the Twitters and the Instagrams and the TikToks, Facebook's still there. Right. They didn't die. Right. So I do think that centralized institutions will always be a thing for people like my parents or something like that, who are at the level where blockchain doesn't make a lot of sense to them, and when I try to break it down for that type of generation, it's a little harder to understand why break away from the system, why should I not have my money in the bank, etc. So I think that centralized institutions will always have their market for the people who don't see the benefits of DeFi, but decentralized institutions will be running side by side.
One of the biggest gripes I have with crypto, and I was bearish for many years. I was, and I turned, and mostly 90% of my bearishness was about sovereign risk. Okay. I was like, there's no fucking way the U.S. is not going to clamp down on this. It seemed almost inconceivable to me. I could not wrap my head knowing that, I was indicted for money laundering a zillion years ago, and they just hate that so much. And the idea, right? So I just couldn't see how they would let that happen. I think if they can go back in time 10 years, they probably would act differently. I don't think they understood it. It's too late now for sure.
Yeah, it's funny. When I first bought Bitcoin, even to go into sports betting, it was it felt like weird. It felt like illegal. Yeah,
exactly. I was like, there's no fucking. Well, listen, a lot of technologies like this start off being used for pornography and or Silk Road. Right. Yeah, and then obviously because they need it. It's it's a low hanging fruit. They need it because they can't be in the centralized system, right? But going to something more profound than this, right in your sweet spot, right? So it was very negative because of sovereign risk. And also, I was really someone that had done pump and dumps at a young age, right? And I'm not proud of that, but I did it. I was great at it. I was the best at it in the world, right? In history, not a great thing to be great at, but I was great at it, right? But and now I'm a very different person. I mean, I give value. I would never do something like that. I run from that stuff, right?
Yeah.
But I saw so many pump and dumps going on, and rug pulls is the new modern phrase, right?
Yeah.
So I just said, there's so much shit going on, right? But what I do see is like when you find these great use cases for blockchain, it's incredible. And to me, and this is what intrigues me about you, is I think one of the best use cases of all is gaming.
Yeah.
Because like the gaming world, to me, is so ripe for disruption.
Agreed.
The engagement in gaming is ridiculous. You can't even imagine how high it is. Like I have a company. I'm involved in a company that we actually have contests in colleges called Bragg House, right? So I'm a owner of it's not a blockchain. It's a regular traditional company, right? But we have these contests, right, with college kids, and the engagement is so high. And we have advertisers like McDonald's and Coca-Cola. Why? Because they can't believe the level of engagement, right? But in the old model of video gaming, it was all the power went to the company, all the money was made by the company. And I remember my own kids. And my son says, he's downstairs right now. He was playing fucking games like 6 hours a day. I'm like, dude, if you ever want to get laid, right? I know they became rock stars, these guys, right? But the point is I believe, and I want you to tell me in your own words, why do you think blockchain and, in the metaverse and this whole Web3 in gaming is going to disrupt the industry and turn around its head? Tell me why.
Yeah, so start with the studios, and all of time since I was gaming as a kid on PS3, Xbox 360, all the way up to today with the current gaming platforms. When you buy something in the game, whether it's for your character, whether it's a new map, whatever you're purchasing, you don't actually own it. So over time, all of these studios have been extracting not only the $60 that people traditionally pay to buy a game over the counter, but the downloadable content. They call it DLC, or microtransactions. In today's world, the free-to-play games, Fortnite, Warzone, Valorant, etc., the biggest games in the world, they feast. Their whole profit model is microtransactions.
Give me an example of microtransaction.
I go on a store in Fortnite and I buy a weapon skin, a camo or a new weapon or a character skin.
That makes you more effective at the game.
Or it just is a flex. It's the same thing as like a Bored Ape. Some people will buy a skin just because it looks cool and they want to, whenever you see that character in the game, you're like, that guy might be a good player or a little
Status.
more status, exactly. Right. But they don't own that. The second that you click purchase in a traditional game, you don't actually own it. And the problem here is years and years down the line, RuneScape accounts have been being sold online for years. People flip accounts because you can't flip assets. Every asset you earn in the game is actually meaningless at the time.
It's owned by the company.
You have to go flip your entire account. So if you want to just earn an asset that's super rare and actually have the ability to monetize it, blockchain gaming gives you that power.
So let's start with the 900-pound gorilla, Axie, right? So was that the first one or just the first one that took off?
It was the first one that really just exploded. And that was last May when they really took off. Right after the crash in May last year, Axie really picked up because a lot of people in the Philippines found that they could make a nice income, especially in a country like the Philippines, playing Axie Infinity.
All right. So very quickly here, just explain the model of how Axie Infinity worked.
So Axie Infinity went with the 2-token economy, and a lot of games do this, where one token is the governance token, and it's kind of just the overarching token of the ecosystem. For Axie Infinity, it's the AXS token, so Axie Infinity's token. But then they have a completely inflationary token, which is called SLP, Smooth Love Potion, which is issued as the rewards token. So it's inflationary because it can just be infinitely printed into the economy as a reward mechanism. A lot of games have had flaws with that mechanic because what they do is they use breeding in these games to try to burn that SLP token, the inflationary token, to try to make it deflationary. But most of the time, those types of economics get out of hand and it becomes unsustainable down the line. So what happened with Axie Infinity is people stopped breeding, the SLP token lost its utility, and it just became so much printed into the economy, like the US dollar, where it's come down now.
Okay, so let's just go back because I think a lot of people might get confused by that.
Yeah.
So, right. So breeding means
taking two characters and making another.
Okay, so the idea would be in this game, let's say you own these two characters. And by the way, the ownership is defined by it being an NFT, correct?
The characters are all NFTs.
So each character, each asset within the game is an NFT.
Correct.
And the NFT, non-fungible token, is the digital sort of stamp that, yes, I indeed do own this. It's a one of one or one, whatever it be, it's authentic, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So then you have, so someone that wants to play the game must have this NFT, right? And then if they want to then have a better or more powerful NFT that can fight better or run faster, they have to take one NFT and essentially like fuck they breed together, they fuck, they have sex,
breed,
like doggy
have
style
sex.
NFT sex, right?
Whatever you want to term it.
And those two, right, would breed, and that costs money.
It does. You have to use the SLP token.
So there's this in-game token that you would spend, and then once that's spent, it's gone, it's burnt, as the phrase goes.
Correct.
It disappears, so you light it on fire, right? And you end up with this more powerful character.
Correct. It's just a new, whatever the generation that it comes out of. Correct.
And the idea would be is that as they're playing the game, if you win, you're playing against other people, right? If you win, you get an SLP token as a reward.
Correct.
That's inflationary because more and more of these things are being issued.
Yep.
So the idea was that to offset that, you would then have people breeding and using other things to spend or get rid of tokens.
To even out the inflation.
The inflation so the token would retain its value.
Yep.
So what happened with Axie Infinity, I'm guessing here, right? And tell me if I'm wrong, is that it's really, really fun on the way up as more and more people playing, because more and more people playing, it gives you this sort of false sense of value. It's not a Ponzi scheme, but it's the way things work. The more people that are adopting a game, that SLP, any inflation gets caught up by breeding,
right.
So they stay ahead of the curve. As soon as it stabilizes and breeding either stops or slows down, and people keep playing the game, more tokens are being created that are being bred out, and it starts to go down
until
it becomes a collapse.
Absolutely.
And is that what wrong with Axie Infinity?
You know, and you said the word, and I'll branch off of it. People call play-to-earn gaming at this stage Ponzi-nomics because of that inflationary token, and eventually it just burns out. Breeding becomes either too expensive, unlucrative, the hype cycle's too high, too many users looking to make money in the game.
I'll tell you why it's not a Ponzi scheme, just for everyone, just to be clear.
Right. It's just the terminology.
Well, but you know why it's not, though? It's not a Ponzi scheme because a Ponzi scheme is when you think you're investing in something and you're getting a return, but secretly they're paying you with other people's money.
Correct.
Here we know. There is no secret. You just know what the economics are. So it's not like you're being fooled into investing by this saying, oh, yeah, we're putting it to work and we have this secret way of making money to give you back a yield. That's a Ponzi scheme.
Yes.
This is just sort of pyramid. It's sort of natural economics. It's not a Ponzi scheme.
Right.
A Ponzi scheme means you don't know what's happening. You think it's something else.
Correct. At least, the white paper lays it out. You know,
right, exactly. No, it's not a secret.
Yeah.
It might be flawed economics or unsustainable, but it's not like it's a secret. That's the difference with a Ponzi.
And it's just it's the model right now. So, Axie cultivated it and a lot of projects followed. And it's a flawed economic model that I think will be changed down the line, but that's where we're at right now. And a lot of games are falling into that same trap with the two tokens.
Okay, so on your show, right? So how often do you do a show?
5 days a week.
Wow.
4 to 5 days a week, 2:30 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday.
So you always have to be there.
Not always. I mean, yes, but no. I have the liberty of if I need to change.
Guest star
Correct.
comes in?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I can maneuver and I can move stuff around. Like I'm not doing a show today. I'm here with you. So.
But I think probably your people love to see you, right?
Correct. Yeah. That's why I try to do Monday through Friday, same time, 2:30 p.m. We go live. Every show's live.
Fair enough. Okay. So give me an example of the typical type of company that you would have on your show. Why is that company there? And what's the outcome of the show? Is it like are people coming there? Are they looking, or is it mostly like investors looking to find the next great game coming out? Or are people looking to find games to play? Who's watching your show?
I think it's a great mix of kind of the both. We have a lot of investors on our channel, obviously with 500,000 plus, and it's an overarching crypto channel. We have a ton of investors who want to know what we're looking at and the plays that we're looking to get into, of course. But we're never out there saying buy this or sell that.
Right, I totally get that.
Completely educational.
If I thought you were doing that, I wouldn't have you on my show. I know you're not doing that.
I 100% know that.
My question is like, when someone comes on the show, right? So in other words, what you're doing is you're interviewing them and trying to find out, why would someone want to play the game, right? What's your growth strategy for this game, right?
Correct.
What are the tokenomics? I assume you go through that sort of stuff as well. Give me an example of a game that was on your show in the past that people learned about it. It did really, really well and had a great run. Give me an example.
Yeah, so I think Mobland, Sin City is what it was formerly called. It's called Mobland. These guys are building like a mafia metaverse. It's like Grand Theft Auto mixed with Saints Row. Gamers out there, you'll know exactly like the blend. So it's, you know, it's got the weed businesses, you know, the coke businesses, the lewd businesses. You know, you can start those in like businesses in that world in the mafia metaverse. There's action. You know, you got your characters that are all like gangsters or different types of attire. You can buy different hats and weapons and stuff like that. They came on the show and they broke down their economy. They broke down everything from the characters, gameplay. When it's, you know, Q3 beta, Q4, we're going to launch the first stage of the game. So really, we just kind of go over everything. And that was a great project. That was the very first one, a gaming project that I brought onto the show on Crypto Banter. And I think that's been the best one so far because of the information that they spilled out. And they were so willing to answer my questions. You know, I think there's a lot of projects out there that would dodge questions.
Let's talk about that. What are the best questions? You're the expert. What are the best questions to ask someone that's bringing a game? What do you look for?
What is your experience in games? What is your experience in business? They both really matter because you can be a great businessman and outsource developers and build a great game. Don't get me wrong. But a little bit of gaming savvy goes a long way, that relatability in the gaming industry. I like to know their economic sense. What's the economic model? Is it a 2-token model like all these different games? Is it progression based where like you level up, level 1 to level 2? And let's just say Realms, you earn a sword, right? Or you earn a shield. Stuff like that. Progression based, I think that's much stronger than 2 tokens. So I ask them about the economics, how long's the game been in development, tell me about your history in blockchain, business, etc. I just like to vet top to bottom, to be honest. When I'm looking at a project, I'm looking at absolutely everything from the team, economics, gameplay. Is it fun? Is the loop going to keep people in? Because the current blockchain games are not fun.
So let me ask you, that was the thing, you mentioned Realms, right? So that's, all disclosure, I am part of the company, right? Realms for 30, but reason I got involved, I invested I was one of the founders, and then I invested my own money into it, by the way, in the round, right, along with some good friends of mine, right? What intrigued me about this was the actual, that it's a great game. Like I look at Axie, I'm like, what the fuck? And then, and listen, again, I understand people in the Philippines, you know, it's great. They can make money, but it's like you would never play that game if you couldn't make money.
Correct.
And I think that, like, ultimately, I think as more and more companies adopt into this space, people are going to start saying, like, does the game look cool? Is it fun to play? And with Realms, you know, I know the guys, the engineers, the founders of the company, they're great guys. They're like, the whole concept was, we need to make this the coolest fucking game. Like, kind of Game of Thrones meets Axie, or World of Warcraft meets Axie Infinity, that sort of thing, right?
Yeah, and the whole problem with the space, you said it perfectly. People are only in crypto gaming to make money right now in these games. The turn-based 3 versus 3, click one button and the characters fight. You're not even participating. You're not dictating the outcome of the game.
Basically,
really,
right? Yeah, that's the point.
It's not fun, and people are getting in because you can invest X to earn Y per day, or this amount of tokens per day. That's the only reason they're in the space, because traditional games are built on the game, the gameplay loop. How fun is it? Is the dopamine triggers going to keep you in the game? Stuff like victory, leveled up, you earned this.
Right.
And the games now, they kind of just lack that, and it's more like a job to people than it is a fun experience.
What about this idea? You bring up a very good point that, like, everyone is in this sort of 2-token economy, and no one has really completely solved that problem or cracked that code of how you stop inflation, which ultimately leads to devaluation of the token, and then people can't make as much money playing the game, and it becomes a death spiral, right?
Yes. Have
you spoken to anyone that you think has got a reasonably good solution for this?
Yeah, I have. I've spoke to a project. It's called Big Time. They're building an RPG kind of game.
I'm involved in it.
Kind of like Realms.
I'm heavily involved in it.
Yeah.
Joystick. I have Joystick as my company's been involved in. They have one of the biggest landholder of Big Time.
That's amazing. I love that project as well.
Big Time is awesome, by the way.
When I talked to their team, they have the model that I was mentioning. Progression, right? Beat a mission and you earn something. That should be it. And it should be an NFT that you're earning, not a freaking token. Because the problem here, it's perfectly fine to earn an asset and then it just has a tradable value on the marketplace. It sells for whatever, just like OpenSea, for example. OpenSea makes their money off the fees, off the little royalty fee that they take. games should function the same exact way. If the game's good enough, their assets would be able to resell on a secondary marketplace put together by the game instead of having a token, which is immediately with a price next to it. That's the problem. No games in the history of time that you earn a token with a price next to it. And the problem is community sentiment with this. They see the chart doing this in a game. It doesn't become they love the game anymore. It's like, what the hell happened to my money? What the hell's happened?
Especially when the game wasn't really, as you said, fun to play.
They're literally there for the money.
Economic, yeah.
Correct.
So you think big time is on the right track?
They're doing it progression. Yeah. You beat a mission, an NFT drops, and then you earn an NFT. And then it just has value on the marketplace. So I think progression based, let the gamers make the money. Let the gamers make the asset, earn the assets. Like a whale shouldn't be able to just come in, buy 100 Axies and make money and never play. It's called scholarship systems where you rent out your Axies or your characters.
Let's talk about that because it's a major business out there. So essentially it's the ultimate, on some level, the corruption of the whole thing where the haves get the assets and they rent them back out to the have-nots. So the Philippines are really just indentured. Well, let's not call them that. Let's say they're hired employees, right?
It's a flawed model. It really is, because it gives opportunity to those players, do not get me wrong, who might not have the economic means to get into certain economies, but definitely it provides that aspect, like I just said, for a whale to come in the game and disrupt the economy. Because when someone owns that many assets, they can then go dump all the tokens they're earning. They can go dump the assets if they'd like to. The problem there too is they have no tie to the scholar. Right. So they might be renting out their assets to them, but they don't know their situation. They don't know if they were to sell those assets that they're lending, what that could do to their life, for example. A lot of those guys who are scholars are looking for that additional income to live. So it is a flawed model 100%. And I think that over time, scholars will always be a thing because it's a rental system that gives the people, like I said, with not the economical means to play the game. But it needs to change a little bit. Like the owner shouldn't be the one reaping all the rewards. Most people will say they get 70% of the split if they're the owner. The gamer's only getting 30% of the earned tokens, and they're putting in the time, right? So, and time is the most valuable resource in the world.
Let's move on to this next major topic, the metaverse.
Yeah.
All right. So, in your own words, first of all, describe what you think the metaverse is. What does it really represent?
To me, the metaverse is so here's the flaw. People say Grand Theft Auto is a metaverse. People say that, Skyrim, traditional Web 2 games are a metaverse. But when I step in those games, it might fit the actual description of an open world with an economy.
Immersive, sort of.
Correct. It's a different experience. But to me, it needs to be something where you literally feel immersed into it, an experience that's not like what we're living in right now. So let's say you're able to put on the headset and you're immersed in this virtual cyberpunk type of world with flying cars and planes, and you have a jet or a yacht or something like that. You want to change your experience, right? Metaverse, I think you want to take your life, like the people who are going to participate in the metaverse, they want something different. Like if you wanted to just live your normal life in the metaverse, you wouldn't go to the metaverse. You would just live your normal life. So I think it's about providing an experience that detaches you from reality is what they're going to go for. But it is an open world with a flowing economy that is completely digital, that immerses you and makes you feel like you're there and a part of it. Not like a video game. You're just sitting there and playing the TV.
So the movie that comes to mind is Ready Player One.
Of course.
Right? So the dystopian aspect of that is that, okay, we've come to a point where real life is so fucking miserable that we'd rather live it in a dream world than in the real world. Is there any aspect to that when you talk about this, like people are going to want to detach from reality? Do you think in some level it's like this next evolution up from like, okay, so people somewhat do that right now with Instagram.
Of course.
Right? Where like, you sit there and people spend hours and hours and you're looking at some like pumped up artificial saccharine version of life where everyone is smiling it the right way. Their food looks great.
Showing the best version of their life.
Right? And I think at some level, the success of TikTok is that it didn't do that. It gave you like sort of the down and dirty version of life as well, right?
Yeah.
Which people appreciated. But do you think that like, is it dependent on some level that, let me restate that. Is the driving force that I'm unhappy with life and the earth is getting so impossible to live on and enjoy that I'd rather spend time in a dream world? Or is it that life is great, but this is just an interesting way to transcend normal life. And they sort of are additive to each other versus subtractive. Because Ready Player One is like a subtractive. It's like where life sucks, and that's, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So there's a two aspects to it. I think there's aspects to both, to be honest. We're talking about the downsides. Mental health with the metaverse could be a major problem because the people who might have not the best real life, but have a phenomenal digital life, there's going to be a big detachment once the headset comes off and it's time to go to bed, for example. But I do think that there will be the people, the thrill seekers, the guys who just want a different type of experience in a different immersive economy or a world that do participate just for the fun of it. We'll see what, like, for example, if Meta comes out with a metaverse and they actually transition a bunch of users from Facebook to the metaverse, then these decentralized metaverses actually come out. Who knows? People might actually just be participating for fun. But I do see both sides. I think people will be there for the experience. I think more people will be there to detach from their reality.
So far, I have been unimpressed whenever I do a virtual reality thing. It's like it's never quite like as great as I thought it would be. The closest I've been was a friend of mine owns the 11.
Right.
Okay. And they built these towers and they were selling real estate. And the idea was they created a metaverse, an 11 metaverse, where you'd actually, rather than, looking at a model, they'd let you go through the whole thing as if you were actually there. And it was incredibly, almost disturbingly realistic. Problem was, not for them, that they ended up selling out so fast that no one got a chance to use it. So it was like, It was ready after they sold out the project.
Yeah.
But it was the first thing I've seen that was really that sort of realistic. Do you see a time when, in the near future, where like you're literally in the metaverse, walking down the street, and in that metaverse, and you see like a store, you go in and you shop and you buy stuff, and it comes shipped to your house, so your metaverse life then becomes they start to intersect?
I absolutely do. Walmart's doing it. And I think of this. Amazon, Jeff Bezos, when you order something off of Amazon, like a furniture piece, let's say you're ordering a desk, but you don't necessarily know what it's going to look like in your room. You put on the headset, you start swiping through furniture, and you're looking at your room, you put the desk in the middle, and you see which one fits, right? So shopping in the metaverse is going to be huge, right? You walk into a grocery store, instead of having to leave your house, boom, boom, take it out, check out, and it gets delivered to your doorstep. There's going to be so many use cases in digital shift, right? So many of these Web 2 companies, institutions, entertainment businesses, Amazons of the world, Microsofts, they're all going to flood into the metaverse in some sort. And I think the business case for guys like Amazon, Walmart, et cetera, is there 100%.
On your show, have you had any people in the metaverse that really have given you some like wow technology that you've seen and you've had on where you're like, man, that's the future?
It's not there yet. I'll be real. And I think anyone who's like saying this is our metaverse today, it's not a metaverse.
Right.
I'm just going to be realistic. This is going to take time.
How many years do you think?
For the metaverse to be fully built out and the right way, virtual reality, the whole nine. I mean, it could be a couple years from now, 2025. And that's just me being real. I'm bearish short term on developers who say it's a metaverse. I'm bullish on the people who are going to build it right, look at the flaws in the space, and make sure that the experience is immersive enough and gripping enough to catch on. And also, just like you said, VR experiences are underwhelming right now.
Yeah.
So it's going to take time to cultivate it. I don't want to say 2025, and if anything comes out before then, it's a fraud. Right. But I'm going to give it a longer timeline, because if we're going to fully shift to a digital world, it's going to take time.
We're almost out of time here, but I want give me 3 tips for the average investor that wants to get into this space. Not specific companies, but what are the 3 things that you would look for? Just 3. Top 3.
And for gaming,
like if you're going to make an investment, looking for new coins, what are the 3 things that you would look for and say, wow, that's a great deal? And 3 things you say, I ain't touching it with a 10-foot ball.
Yeah,
what are your 3 and 3?
Let's start with 1. Team. Invest in people, not products or promises. Invest in people and not promises. Because in the blockchain space, everyone says they're building a game, they're building a metaverse, they have this utility, that utility. But what have they built? Some people will say in the gaming space, they've worked on Call of Duty, but they may have worked on Call of Duty for 1 week. Literally, they'll bring in those types of devs that just tweak the game a little bit, and then they leave. They're never really a part of the project. Vet teams, bet on people in this space, specifically people with track records of success, like I mentioned earlier, you're in business, Web3, whatever it is. Number two, you go to the product. Is it going to be fun? Is the experience there? Is the utility there? Whatever the project is, whether it's Avalanche running a blockchain or whether it's a game, what is the game going to be fun? What is their user base? What is their following? Are they getting social traction, et cetera? Take a look at all the peripherals on their websites. You know, who are they backed by, for example? Who's willing to invest in these people? Right. So I think that's number two, is just product itself. And then number three, market cap. Pay attention to market caps.
And how would you like, when do you think, so you need context for that? Because, like, you know, what makes something overvalued? And
well, so just take a, when you're looking at the perspective of a game, for example, you can take a look at these top 50 coins, you know, Sandbox, Gala, et cetera. They're like $9 billion fully diluted. Axie at one point was a $25 billion fully diluted. For perspective, that's half of Activision's valuation, and they have produced like 10 Call of Duties, World of Warcraft, the whole nine. So valuations in this space are generally overblown. So look for those undervalued projects. Once you do those research, the upcoming projects that are taking time to, like I'm involved in a lot of projects in an investment standpoint that won't come out till 2023, 2024, but I'm bullish on that timeline, because what they're able to do, they're able to watch the failures in the space and then cultivate their failures into their own successes, building blocks to the future. So people who are like just completely going at it from the right approach, from a timeline scale, from the people to the product, I think that's the biggest thing. Okay.
Let's go now to the negative side. What are the things that just you say, I not going near it? How do you feel? I'll give you some ones. How do you feel about projects where they're not doxed, where you don't know who the founders are?
I hate it. I can't lie. I hate it. Not like Bored Apes weren't doxed for a long time. So it's proven you can be a successful team without being doxed. But for me, it's hard for me to invest in a project not knowing who's behind it, or putting a face to it, or at least experience. Let us know what you've done. Let us know what you've worked on. Give us a LinkedIn page or something. You know what I mean? Something to build off of, to build trust. The biggest thing in blockchain is trust. Right. Some of these projects, we all know, like you said, the rug pulls, the pump and dumps, whatever you want to call them. So trust is everything in this space. So I think an undoxed team to me is a red flag.
And what would you say about a team that they're doxed, you know who they are, but they've created an ecosystem of tokens where they're mostly free trading? Do you look at lockups and what the cliffs are? Is that important to you?
Has to. Big thing for me is tokenomics. That goes back to, if you're looking to get into the space, one of those things you need to get a grip on is tokenomics, vesting schedules, token unlocks. You know, how long are these tokens vested for? That's the difference between a market cap and a fully diluted market cap, for example. That's
you look
a whole
at both. You think both are important?
Both are very important, because the diluted could be just so large. I've seen projects with no product, with nothing behind it, with an underwhelming team that's like a $15 billion fully diluted market cap. And it's like, for what, you know? So you got to pay attention to that. And then you'll see their normal market caps like under a billion. Sure. So they have a 15x difference from their circulating tokens to their vested tokens. That is huge for people to pay attention to, because that's technically where people can get caught up, being exit liquidity, what people say in this space.
So what's next for you? So you started this thing, was 10 months ago, you said? 10 months?
Yeah. I've been in content going on 10 months.
Right.
Yeah.
So, okay. So you've got this big success behind you, right? And there's a saying, with great power comes great responsibility, right? Yeah. So what do you want to do with this power you have now? You have the ability to help companies obviously probably get financing. Correct. You can help them, get more wider distribution of their tokens, right? Yeah. So where do you see for you, where would you see yourself in 5 years? What do you want to do?
Yeah. So I'm going to continue with the content. I'm going to continue advising gaming projects, helping them out with gameplay loops, tokenomics. Those are as an esports background, I've played so many games. So I love alpha testing, beta testing gameplay and giving feedback, tokenomics, marketing structure for like a lot of projects ask me, how should we roll out this launch or this partnership, etc. So I love advising projects, working with projects. I also have a game that's in production that's going to be a crypto game. So I'm going to be releasing that at some point as well. So I'm going to want to do my own game. On top of that, I'm very big in play to earn and earning in play to earn. So I have a ton of different assets in different games, which are farming in the background. And I'm going to launch an NFT collection that gives access to some of those privileges to my holders, to have access to basically a decentralized autonomous organization to get the benefits from my play to earn.
Brilliant. All right. So last question of all, where do people find you? What's the name of your YouTube? It's Crypto Banter?
Crypto Banter on YouTube, Hustlepedia YT on Twitter, and then if you want to follow my Instagram, hustle_NFT.
There you have it. So it's every day you broadcast at 2:30, Monday through Friday.
Monday through Friday, 2:30, all things crypto gaming, NFTs, and Metaverse.
All right, guys. Well, listen, he has my endorsement. Seriously, I think you're a great guy. I love what you're doing. I love the education. You obviously have a very deep understanding of just not crypto, but economics, which is good to see. You know, it was funny. You see me writing this book, and you're like talking about my first chapter.
Yeah.
I'm fucking only in the first. I'm in the second chapter. Okay, because I overwrote it. But you know, you really. So I really like where you're going, your philosophy. So I wish you great success. Everyone,
Jordan.
tune in to his show. Give it a shot. Listen, if you're going to be investing in this business, I think personally, I think this is really has massive legs. This whole idea of this transition from old style gaming to play to earn gaming, blockchain gaming, the metaverse. I'm invested in heavily. Realms of Ethereum is just one of a couple of investments that I love. I love this space, and I think this is where the future is going, and you should take a very close look at it. So, Hustle, thanks for coming on, buddy.
Thank you, Jordan.
Share this with your friends. Subscribe to his channel. It's probably worth it. In fact, I know it is. Take care.